I then went on to disappoint them for many, many years after that, academically, by failing every single exam and getting expelled from every school. Later on in life, I was diagnosed with ADHD. My father turned to me and he said, this whole Muslim thing, no, I've had enough. You won't come home with us tonight. I remember going to my mum and she would tell me, Joel, just go away, I don't want to see you. I said, Mum, like I have nothing, like I don't even have, I don't have any money, like I have nothing. I'm sleeping in a mosque, I've got nothing, Mum. And I remember she was cleaning, she was brushing something off the floor. She never cleans. She found there was a penny, 1 penny coin. I'll never forget, she picked it up and she said, do you want this? Take that, that's all I'm giving you.
It means so much more to risk losing everything in the pursuit of something that means so much to you.
For me to convert to Islam, I'm turning my back on everything they raised me to do.
Hello and welcome back to another Warrior Academy episode. I'm here today with Abdulrahman. Abdulrahman, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sebastian. It's my pleasure to be here.
So if you could, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, and a lot of people who are watching will know who you are, but for anyone who doesn't, could you just give the guys and girls at home just a brief intro of who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, my name is Abdul Rahman, as you pronounce.
Did I get it right?
Pronounce my name perfectly.
Been practicing all morning.
Yes. So. And I'm from UK. I'm from the UK. I'm from London. Who am I? Many things. First and foremost, I'm a husband and a father to some amazing children. I'm also a business owner. I'm CEO of Afia Partners, which is our family business. We specialize in tailor-made leadership development programs.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'd love to talk to you about leadership. That's a big pillar of our 4-step methodology as well, leadership. So it'd be great to have your insights on that. Abdulrahman, I'd love to go back to your childhood straight away. A huge part of your story, which I feel a lot of our members watching this will find really inspirational, centers around this concept of understanding and believing who you are and the power of being unique in the world and not letting anyone sway you around that. So tell me a little bit about growing up in the UK. Is it London you grew up in?
That's right, yeah. Well, I was born in Paddington St Mary's Hospital in London. I had a wonderful childhood, come from a wonderful family, very privileged, never had to worry about money, never had to worry about anything at all. My parents actually took me off to get tested when I was younger to Mensa, and they ran various tests on me and came back and told my parents to their delight that your son's actually scored at a genius level.
Wow.
Yeah, I then went on to disappoint them for many, many years after that by academically by failing every single exam I ever took and getting expelled from every school I ever went to.
Wow.
Which was about, I think, 8 or 9 schools that I got expelled from. So when I was younger,
that was a behavior thing?
Yeah, so later on in life, I was diagnosed with ADD when I was in my mid-20s. But before that, I was just somebody who didn't enjoy school. And when I didn't enjoy school, I couldn't do well academically. So I'd play up. I found I was really good at making people laugh. I was really good at disrupting things, and everybody would love it when I was the class clown. So I did really well at that, and that career at a young age of being a disruptor and an absolute idiot in class, quite honestly, led to me getting kicked out of every school that I was at. So I found I really didn't enjoy school.
Right.
Part of the reason that I didn't take it seriously, though, was because coming from such a privileged background, I always expected to take over my father's business. My father had a business that he inherited from his father called Afia Carpets, very successful carpet and textile business. And I, from a very young age, just knew that that's where you were heading. That's where I was heading. So exams didn't matter to me. Nothing mattered to me. All that mattered to me was having fun. So I rapidly turned into quite a wild child, getting into fights, getting into problems, and really not having a strong connection with my mum and dad or my sister, and just wanting to enjoy life or have as much fun as I could possibly have. Those were my early years. Really interesting.
Something that really struck out to me and what you said is this word disruption. And isn't it funny how disruptive people are often the ones that go on to challenge the status quo and do incredible things? And we almost encourage that, right? When people are adults to be a bit disruptive. And a lot of people in the workplace are, how can we be disruptive and change what's going on around us? And, that's when the creative ideas come when we disrupt what's going on around us. But for our kids, they're punished for being disruptive, right? You go to school and you're disruptive. You've got disruptive behavior, which is so typical with children with ADHD or ADD.
Right.
And they're constantly told, you are naughty, you are disruptive. These are negative things. And what I often find is, right, did you experience that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Being told you were naughty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then getting stuff.
Right. And so what I find, especially working with thousands of kids with ADD, is they're told from a young age they're naughty because they're disruptive, because they're struggling to fit into that very rigid criteria.
Right.
And then when they're told that, I always say to parents, we paint a picture of what our children become by the words we use.
Right.
It's as simple as that. When you talk to a child, if you say they're naughty, they become naughty.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when I work with children with ADD in particular. I try and give them responsibility, because then they grow into a responsible. They're very cautious. They are more aware of their behavior. But it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you tell a child who's disruptive they're naughty, they grow into that, and no doubt that's kind of what you experienced then. So
yeah,
how many schools did it?
I think it was 8 schools I got kicked out of. It was interesting you mentioned about giving children responsibility, because I agree with that. In giving them responsibility, even children who may have ADD or ADHD or other challenges that they're facing, at the same time there has to be that balance of discipline. And I think that my mum and dad, bless them, they tried their best. They ended up sending me, one of the schools I went to was called Dartington Hall School, which is a boarding school in Devon. And the philosophy there was there are no school rules. We will give children complete freedom.
Yeah.
And in giving them freedom, they'll become responsible. And I think that went a bit too far. So the school closed down, and it was for 100 years, one of the most prestigious.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the owners died, new owners took over with this new philosophy, and within years the school completely crashed in scandal. You can, if you Google it, it's just, it's unbelievable. It's all happened. Yeah, completely. Yeah. So that giving people freedom, or giving them responsibility, I think that's where discipline. It has to be balanced with discipline.
There's got to be a balance.
Yeah. So I think in the absence of not knowing what to do, especially in I was born in 1974, so you're talking about mid-80s. People didn't know what they know to say about things such as ADD, ADHD, and those type of things. So they just kind of it was more trial and error. Nothing. This isn't working. They send me to really strict schools. That's not working. Let's go the other way and send them to a school that has no school rules, which I also got kicked out of as well.
Okay, so this is all primary school or secondary school? And
primary, secondary school.
Okay,
yeah.
So secondary school, you've been kicked out of several different schools at this stage. Failing academically at this stage.
Oh yeah.
Behavior-wise, it's gone downhill. How were the parents responding to you being expelled from schools?
I think that they were really, really at their wits' end. They nothing was working.
Yeah.
And a big part of where all that came from, I know where it came. A lot of it came from me just wanting attention. So when I was born, later on in life, my mum told me that when she had me as a fashion accessory. It was just the thing to do in those days. That having a child was just the thing to do. And my mum was very, she was very she not so much now, but she was very driven by the materialistic life and what people think of you, and everything was about the clothes that she wore and making sure that nobody else has the same dress as her. And part of the fashion of that time was to have a kid. So she wasn't ready to have a child, but she had me as soon as I arrived. She was like, oh my God,
right,
what am I going to do now? And essentially ignored me for, in the early years. When they had my sister, I've got a wonderful sister, Jenny. And when Jenny was born, they were ready for Jenny.
Right.
So they gave her all the attention they could. So I was about 5 or 6 years old. So I think it was at that point, no longer getting attention. That's when the bad behavior started, and it went from bad to worse pretty rapidly.
There's an interesting point of view on parenting and how it's a little bit unfair that the next siblings kind of get the better version of you as a parent, right? Because when you have your first child, you don't know how to parent.
Right.
You're trying to remember how to parent the way you were parented, which wasn't necessarily the best thing, the best way, depending on who you were and it was raising you. And so you're kind of winging it, right? And I think a lot of parents don't want to admit that, but they are.
Yeah.
And then you get better, right? And so often the second, third, or fourth child benefits from the best parenting.
Yeah. That's probably quite accurate. I've got my What is he? The one that's with us today? You're the second. Yeah, he's the second child's with us today.
Yeah.
So he might agree with.
And also, you get to a maturity where, the first child is a bit of a shock, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a shock to the routine. It's a shock to suddenly you got to live for someone else other than just your selfish reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've now got to think of someone first.
That's true. And I think I was 19 years old when I had my first child as well.
19.
So
Yeah.
I definitely was.
So you went through that. It was like,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
I'm not ready for this.
Yeah,
I've got to be. And so,
Yeah.
wow, yeah. So okay, so that explains, the background, the chaos, should I say, of going from school to school to school. I had a kind of similar. It's not in terms of being expelled, but I had a similar situation in that I was living in Aldershot in the UK, an army family.
Yes, sure.
And one of the school that I grew up in, there were 40 kids in the class.
Wow.
And the behaviour was so bad in that class. We had 13 teachers come and go.
Wow.
Kids were getting expelled left, right, and centre. It wasn't a particularly affluent area, and I was failing academically massively.
Okay.
And so, we moved with the army, and I had to move 2 hours away. And so my parents were like, right, both government jobs. We didn't have a lot of money, but we need to put them into a private school in 2 years. So we found this. They found this old kind of 1800 style private school. And I was bullied really badly for 2 years there. But it's like one of the reasons I was bullied badly wasn't because of how old school they were. And I wasn't punished for poor academics. But on the flip side, like, they taught me so much when it came to discipline and the academics, which actually benefited me. So it's kind of like the balance there, right?
Sure.
So that was certainly my experience of changing schools, coming from the failing academically and the bad behaviour to now having to really be strict, and I can see where the private school stuff comes in.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So at this stage you are sort of 16.
Yeah, we can go to 16. Yeah. 16 was when I took I think I was getting ready to take my O levels at that time, which I failed. In fact, I didn't on most of my O levels. It might have been GCSEs. I think they were called at that time. I can't remember, but I got U on most of them, which meant unattended. I didn't even bother going to sit the exams. I just knew there's no way I passed them. And the few that I did go and sit, I failed completely.
Were your parents academic at all or not?
My father is. Yeah, my father's very academic, very learned, very studious. My mum not so much.
Degree?
My mum's right. Yeah.
University route?
Yeah, and all my family. So most of my family either went to Oxford, Cambridge, or they travelled and they went to Harvard. So I come from a family of successful academics. So very successful family. So I really, absolutely. So and I was the first one to absolutely not go down that path.
I'll say you were the disruptor. Yeah, right? Yeah. So you were the disruptor. And for your kids, we're skipping forward again, but for your kids now, how do you approach the whole academic side?
I made sure that, number one, I did my best. Number two, I accepted that every single one of them is unique. None of them have to be what the other one is.
Yeah.
None of them have to be like me. And fortunately, they are all way better than I ever was. And
they're own individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. My oldest son's 28. My youngest is 21. How old's Anas? 21. Yeah, he's 21. So the youngest is 21. So they've all done what they needed to do.
There's such a core message throughout your story, which we'll get to, about being unique. And it's it's such a powerful core single message for parents to pick up on, because I think we can do so much as parents to damage our children if we don't allow them to really express themselves and be unique. Okay, guide me through what was next.
Nothing after 16, failed all the exams, got kicked out of King Alfred School in Hampstead, brilliant school, loads of friends. Then went to Ashbourne Tutorial College in Kensington, which was an attempt to try something else to help me to resit my exams, which didn't work. And it was around that time that I was doing a lot of partying. So I was drinking, I was, taking all types of, drugs. I was really deep into the rave culture. I was going to, warehouse parties. I was absolutely out of control. And around the same time, I started to get really curious about religion. And I grew up as an atheist. I didn't believe in anything. But I started to get really curious.
Where did that come from?
It came from being at a party drunk with a friend of mine called Simon, who when we were drunk and smoking, he turned to me one day and he said to me, he said, Joel, that was my name. He said, Joel, why are we here? I said, we're here to have a good time. He said, no, why are we here? Like, why are we alive? I said, oh, what are you talking about? Like, shut up. He said, no, really, why are we alive? I said, well, Simon, if you keep on talking like that, you might not be alive for much longer. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, we're trying to enjoy ourselves. And he said, no, why are we here? We're just here to just live, do business like our parents, and then spend money and then die, and that's it. There's nothing more to life. I told him, no, you're crazy. And I did think he was crazy, and I didn't think about it after that, except that question, why are we here? It did stay in my mind.
Was Tom? Was it Tom?
Simon, it was my friend Simon. Yeah.
So was Simon an atheist as well?
Simon came from a Christian family. He was, I don't think he was an atheist. I think he always believed in God. Yeah, but he was never keen on exploring or talking about it. I just think he'd been drinking too much.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that in the course of that discussion, he said something which I couldn't get out of my mind, which was a question that I didn't have the answer to, which is, why are we here? So from time to time, that question it was never in the front of my mind, but it was something that I'd think about. You know, is there more to life than just what I'm doing now and what I think I'm going to do, take over my dad's business? That's it? There's nothing else? But of course, I didn't believe in God. I thought that anybody that did was just brainwashed. I thought religions were all man-made. They're just used by people to control people, to create wars. And I hated everything to do with religion. I hated. So for me to even consider that there might be a God, there might be a purpose for creation, was just out the question. But I couldn't ignore the question that was in my mind. And that's when I started to say to myself, am I just going to ignore a question that I can't answer? Or am I going to explore it and see if I can find the answer? And over the course, really from between 16 years old to 18 years old, I was on the lookout for the answer to that question, you know? And then when I was around 18, I think, for me personally at least, I found the answer to the question, you know, after all that time. Yeah.
How, when you were mulling over this question in your mind, did you have conversations with your parents? I'm assuming you were still living with
Yeah, no, I didn't discuss anything with them.
So who did you discuss it with?
Nobody.
So this was just an internal...
Yeah, this was so for example, I go to the library to go and, well, supposedly to do my homework. I'd get distracted. I put that down to the ADD. So I'd be sitting there. I was meant to go to St. John's Wood Library to do my homework, and then I'd look up at the books and get distracted. And then I thought, oh wait, maybe I can find some books on religion, maybe. And so I started taking different books down and flipping through them, having a look, and didn't find anything that made any sense, put it all back. And so from time to time, every few months, it was only every few months, I was still doing everything crazy that you think about, but occasionally I'd stop and think, is there an answer to that question? And I pretty much decided by the time I was 18, there probably wasn't an answer to that question. I'm never going to know the answer to that question. And the question is, why are we here? Why are we alive? Is it just for no purpose, or there is a purpose? And if there is a purpose, what is it? So from 16 to 18, I couldn't find the answer.
Yeah.
I almost gave up on it until I went to Hyde Park Speakers Corner one day and spent the day listening to everybody there talking about their different faith.
Wow.
And that was the moment where I thought, okay, I might be able to find the answer here.
Was there, Hyde Park Corner, listening to different people, what sort of religions were talking at this stage?
I mean, everybody was there. So the Christians, Jewish people, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists. I remember Hare Krishnas were walking past. Everybody was there. Everybody.
Was the first time you had really seen this sort of a mix?
Yeah, and it was crazy as well, because if you've ever been to Speaker's Corner, it's nuts. I mean, it's like going into a football match, but at least when you go into to watch a football match, for the most part, you've got two teams and you're either with this team or that team. Here, you walk into Speaker's Corner, as soon as you get close, the sound of people shouting
at the same time.
Yeah, all at the same time. All you hear is chaos, and people aren't particularly friendly to each other. There's opposing views. Anytime you speak about different religions, different faiths, there's going to be some tension. And I was like, this place is absolutely insane. But I kind of liked that craziness to it. So I just spent some time listening to everybody, and step by step, I kind of just gravitated towards what I found. One person there who happened to be a Muslim, I found the things that he was saying resonated with me. And over the course of a few months, I would go back every Sunday and start spending more and more time at the park listening to what this guy was saying, and eventually finding, for me, what was the answer to the question.
Was there anything that really struck you that he was saying that was like the moment, or that was the one thing where you were like, wow?
Well, for the thing that struck me, was that he, the main thing for me was what he was saying was that there was a book, and in this book there were miracles that weren't known until very recently. That was one of the things. So I said, what's he talking about? So we talk about various miracles, scientific discoveries that are mentioned in the Quran, which more than 1,400 years ago, they're mentioned in this book. So I thought, well, how can those things be mentioned in that book? And then the second thing was that he was explaining the same book that they have today, the same book that the Muslims read today, the Quran, in Arabic, is exactly the same book as exactly the same book, letter for letter, as it was over 1,400 years ago. It's never changed. That's pretty amazing. And I couldn't find, when I looked at the other faiths, I couldn't find a book similar to that. Right. I found other faiths, their books were written several years after. But this one was exactly the same, not one letter's changed. So then I was intrigued and wanted to know more about it, you know?
Right. So fascinating. So then you started to research more, you started to dig in more. Yeah. And at which stage did you go home and say, look, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to study?
Well, I didn't. So what happened was I would go back, and for about 6 months, I'd go back every Sunday, almost every Sunday, maybe not every Sunday, but I'd go back and I'd listen to what this guy was saying. I'd take my Walkman, you know, very old, I don't know if people watching would even remember what a Walkman is, but a stereo cassette that you could record things on. Yeah. I'd record what he was saying, I'd listen to it during the week, and after about 6 months, after about 3 months, I became convinced that there was now a God. So I stopped stopped disbelieving in a higher power, and I accepted there was a higher power. Mm-hmm. And then the next 3 months, I became reasonably convinced that Islam was something special, and that the Quran was a book that I believe couldn't have come from a human. Yeah. And so after about 6 months, I hadn't spoken to this guy once. I was very scared to speak to him because a lot of the stuff on television at that time about Muslims, I didn't even know what a Muslim was. All I knew was Arabs. Right. I was very scared of Arabs growing up. I thought they were all crazy. You know, they were doing all the terror. In my mind, I thought they were doing all the terrorism. I remember seeing the news reports constantly of things happening in different parts of the world, people holding the Quran in one hand, a machine gun in the other hand. Right. I was pretty terrified of those people. So for 6 months of listening to this guy, I didn't speak to him once. Then one day, I was at the park, and I just said to myself, you've got to speak to him. You've got to speak to him. But I felt very scared to do it, to be honest with you. I didn't feel particularly safe. There was no reason for me to be scared, but I did feel scared. And I just told myself, don't be, there's no need to be scared. Just speak to him. So I went up to him and I said to him, excuse me, I don't know if you've got time for somebody like me, but I'm really interested in what you're saying and I'd like to know more. And from that, he was the warmest person you could ever really imagine. And we sat down, we had such a long conversation. And it was that day that I actually converted to Islam in the park.
That same day?
Yeah, that first day you had a conversation with him. Although for 6 months, I'd been listening, learning, I guess. But we sat down, we spent hours together. He answered all the questions I had. And at that point, I became convinced that I do believe this. Mm. So I think I'm ready to kind of take the next step.
Yeah, ready.
But I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know, for example, I remember them saying to me, okay, we're gonna go and pray now. Do you want to come and join us? Mm. I did once. No, definitely not. Like, what? I don't know anything at that stage, but I did know that I believed that Islam was the way of life that I felt comfortable adopting. But I didn't go and tell my mum and dad. Right. I knew that they would go absolutely ballistic.
Why? What was for you, what was the fear exactly?
The fear for me was I'm turning, in their minds, for me to convert to Islam, I'm turning my back on everything they raised me to be. It's not that they raised me to be an atheist. We grew up, they celebrated, we didn't really have a faith in the house, to be honest.
You did Christmas.
Everything. Christian Christmas, Hanukkah, Easter, just chuck everything in there. We celebrated everything. It didn't matter. Yeah. And there was no feeling of faith growing up, but I knew that they would feel that I was turning my back on everything they'd ever done for me because of all the faiths to go to. And some people would say, well, that's just you continuing to rebel as you did when you were younger. But of all the faiths to go to Islam at a time when politically there was so much, tension in the media, there was so much happening, a bit like today, I suppose. I knew it was going to hurt them. So I didn't tell them. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know when I was going to tell them.
If it took you 6 months of listening to someone speaking about Islam, for you to then have the courage to approach them and actually have a conversation, you can then imagine your parents, right, feeling the same sort of fear.
Yeah.
And then finding out they'd just be confused and
Absolutely.
yeah, I can
And I was only 18 years old.
see the shock.
I mean, I'm not the 49-year-old man that I am now, who's able to have, pockets of wisdom from time to time, where I'm able to think about other people's feelings. I didn't used to think about people's feelings. I was very selfish, growing up, very entitled. So I didn't understand what I understand now about how much fear they would have, So the night that I told them after 6 months. So 6 months, I was 6 months after converting to Islam, I knew that I had to tell them. The reason I had to tell them is I had read that it was the habit of the Prophet Muhammad. When we say his name, we say peace and blessings be upon him. So it was his habit that he would grow his beard. So when I read that, I said, I'm going to grow my beard. I'm going to grow my beard. So when I started to grow my beard, I was like, oh no, now I'm going to have to explain to them. I'm going to have to tell them why. Yeah. So they were watching TV. I can't remember what night it was, but they were watching television. I came down and I said, Mum, Dad, I've got something to say. It's okay. What? I said, converted to Islam. My mum started crying straight away. My father burst out, he was laughing his head off. He thought it was a joke. My dad thought that I was joking 100% because how? What are you talking about? Of course I haven't. But my mum, I think she knew, because for the 6 months since I had become a Muslim, I'd stopped doing a lot of things I was doing. I was no longer going to nightclubs. Girls weren't calling my house. I just wasn't wanting to do the things that I used to do.
You changed.
So she noticed there was a change, and she used to ask me, like, what's going on? Why you seem different?
Did she think those changes were positive? The ones that she noticed? I thought you was announced.
I think they weren't positive or negative.
Just a change.
Just on a bit of change. So imagine, you've got your child and your child lives a certain way, and all of a sudden
what's going on?
Something's up. She did try to talk to me, to be fair. I remember I was going to say she didn't, but thinking back, she did talk to me a few times and say, what's going on? How come the girls aren't calling anymore? How come you're not doing this? You're not going out with your friends? And so she, to her credit, she definitely tried to find out what was going on. But I think this thing that I had inside was I wasn't ready to tell them, because I knew when I did, it was going to be bad. It wasn't that bad at first. It got really bad after a bit of time.
At home?
Yeah. It wasn't so bad at first, I think.
So initially they were just like, is this a phase?
Yeah, exactly. It's a phase. You're going to grow out of it. And then bit by bit, things just kind of collapsed. Week by week, things got worse.
More serious?
Yeah, more serious. I think I remember praying the early morning prayer at like 4 o'clock in the morning in my room, very quietly. And somehow my dad would always get woken up. And before we pray, we wash our hands and our face and our arms. It's very quiet. But somehow, whenever I would do it, he'd get woken up.
He would know.
He'd know. And I remember praying. I'd have my face on the floor, and he'd open the door in my head. And he'd be shouting at me, "What are you doing? Disturb my sleep." And he'd get really upset.
Really?
And I don't know how I kept on waking him up, because I was trying to be careful. Yeah, I was so careful not to. But I think bit by bit, it just went from bad to worse. And so one night they took me out for dinner. We used to go to a lovely Italian restaurant every Friday night in St. John's Wood called La Casalinga, a beautiful restaurant. And we went out that Friday night. And that was the night that my life changed forever. So, I mean, if you want, I can tell you about that. Or...
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. Yeah, if you're happy to share.
Yeah.
Just a quick shout out to the guys at Shield who manage this podcast, come up with the strategy behind the podcast, help me schedule interviews, as well as do all of the editing and the producing of the podcast. Without them, we wouldn't be able to produce this podcast. If you would like to create your own podcast, I can't recommend the Shield team enough. They have done well over 100 episodes for me over the last few years, and I've been so pleased with the results. So have a look in the description of this video or the podcast episode, and you'll see how to get in touch with them yourself.
When you're doing something. But happiness is the feeling you have once it's done. So we could be doing this podcast now, right? It's fun.
Yeah.
But how I feel afterwards, that makes me happy. That I did something, that I shared something. So that feeling of happiness, I think, is what I was always chasing. I think a lot of people are looking for happiness.
Yeah.
But
they're chasing an emotion.
Yeah, chasing the emotion.
Something that really has struck me, that I heard at some point, was we think that we're searching for happiness, but really we're searching for peace.
Wow. That's
Really good. True peace isn't being happy. happy and having euphoria and being elated is actually a stressful experience. It's a stressor.
That's interesting.
In the same way, your body is not in a peaceful state. In the same way, a negative emotion would be as well, right? And so true peace is not having a strong emotion either way. Not having too much happiness or too much negative.
I like that. That's nice. Yeah. That's really
very, very related to what you said.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Let's go back to when things weren't so good.
Right.
I think that's where we left off.
Yeah, I think when we went out for dinner, things hadn't been great at home. Things had been steadily getting worse. And I was always, even though I was a wild child, I loved my mom and dad, and they loved me, and I loved my sister. She loves me. And even though I was crazy and doing crazy things, I was still very, very close to my parents, very close, especially my father. My father, to me, was always, we used to go cycling together, we used to do everything together. And even though the way I was living my life is very different to how he lived his life, he never drank alcohol, he never did anything. I just had so much love for him. So after I became a Muslim, I still had the same feelings for them. And after a few months had gone by, we went out for dinner to the Casalinga restaurant at St. John's Wood. Ordered the usual food. Dessert came. I always used to get this lemon sorbet. It was just lovely. It was the best part of my Friday evening. And eating lemon sorbet, and that's when my father turned to me and he said, "Joel, we need to talk." I said, "No problem, Dad. What's up?" So he said, "This whole Muslim thing, I get it, and it's fine, but I've had enough." All right. No, I mean, I had enough, Joel. You got a decision to make. Either you drop this thing, let it go, and we go back to being a normal family. We go home tonight as normal. Everything carries on as normal. Or you choose to continue to be this Muslim thing that you've adopted, but you won't come home with us tonight, and you won't be my son.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking.
You weren't expecting that.
I was expecting, I was just lemon sorbet, and
No,
I remember the wafer on top of the sorbet, because I was always my favorite bit, biting into the wafer. I think I was biting into the wafer at the time, and I thought, what's going on here? And I remember, I know, looking at them, I realized at that moment, wait, this is happening. Something, I looked at my sister Jenny, I looked at my mum. They were just staring at me. They all, I realized, had known that this was going to happen tonight. I said, "Dad, what are you talking about?" He's like, "I can't have it anymore. I'm not having it. You make your decision. We can't have you living like this anymore." I said, "Dad, I love you. Mom, I love you. Jenny, I love you so much. But I have to love the one that made you more, and the one that made me and made you told me to pray 5 times a day and to live my life in this particular way, and I believe that. I'm not going to stop believing that. Can't we just work things out?" And about 10 minutes later, they left the restaurant. I was still sitting in the restaurant. Fortunately, they paid the bill, and that was it. I found myself at that point homeless, without anything for the first time in my life, whereas from the time I was born in St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington until that day, I had everything. I was first amongst my friends to have a convertible BMW. I was the first person to be always decked out in Giorgio Armani. I had everything, like everything that you could ever want. I never once had to think, how am I going to get this? No, whatever I wanted, I had. And all of a sudden, on a cold night, it was about 8 in the evening, 9 in the evening, I didn't have a home to go to. And that, for the first time in my life, was a realization that I had to now do something for myself instead of having people do things for me.
This is where the responsibility came in then.
Yeah. It would be noble to say, but disingenuous to say that that's when I had the epiphany. And I was forced into it. I didn't have any choice.
Yeah.
Everything was taken from me.
I guess from a parent's perspective, they probably expect you to come crawling back within a couple of days.
Yeah, of course. And I understand why they did what they did. And the why I'm always so happy to talk about this, and they are happy for me to talk about it, because I'm so close to them today.
It's still close.
So even though what followed was years of being away from them, not being close to them, today we're as close as, I spoke to at least by WhatsApp, my dad today, my sister today, my mum today, checked in on them. I always have a weekly call with my mum, every Saturday, so I'll be doing that tomorrow. My dad on Sunday, my sister yeah, tomorrow. I'm
very, very
couldn't be closer. I couldn't be closer. But in between that, there was a lot of separation and pain and difficulties. Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by stories of people who have, especially in business and entrepreneurship in particular, where people have had nothing and kind of nothing to lose, and then bet it all to do something incredible, take a big risk. But I'm even more fascinated to hear stories of people who had it all and then bet it all because they've got so much more to lose. Like they already had a successful business and then they basically took a big risk to create something new and sold that and did that, or they had an incredible life and were supporting a family and then they took the risk to go do something else because it means so much more, I think, to risk losing everything in the pursuit of something that means so much to you.
Yeah.
Your whole existence growing up, you described it as yourself to say was a fairly entitled upbringing. You risked basically everything that was normal life for you to go from that to homeless and no other option, based on the kind of compulsion you had towards Islam and following your faith. I think that's just fascinating that you felt so strongly in one direction to give up so much. And I mean, there must have been conversations after that with your parents, right? After that Friday night at the Italian restaurant. When was the next conversation with your parents? Was it the next day or?
No, they didn't pick up the phone. No, they wouldn't pick up the phone.
So they were really like, you're no longer our son.
Yeah, they were for real. I was thinking to myself, they actually stuck by it pretty well.
Okay.
I remember one time, I think that they'd moved house and they were now living in Kensington at a huge place. And I remember going to my mum to go and see her. And she was telling me, Joel, just go away. I don't want to see you. I said, Mum, I had nothing. Like I don't have any money. Like I have nothing. I'm sleeping in a mosque. I've got nothing, Mum.
Wow.
And I remember she was cleaning. She's so crazy. She was cleaning. She was brushing something off the floor. She never cleans. But for some reason, she was brushing something off the floor. She found there was a penny, 1 penny coin. I'll never forget. She picked it up and she said, "You want this? Take that. That's all I'm giving you."
Wow.
I thought, what? So that was the last time I ever asked them for anything. But then things did start to get better because the next time after that, I told my Mum, I met an amazing lady. I'm going to get married. And I want you and Dad to be there. This was only about a year.
Okay.
A year or so after.
So about 19 at this stage.
Yeah.
You forgave your parents.
I forgave my parents. There was no forgiveness needed because in the 6 months of becoming a Muslim, one of the things that I'd been learning was how much you have to respect your parents.
Yeah.
So whilst 6 months I hadn't told them I'd become a Muslim, I had been learning about the faith. And a major part of what I'd been taught was you can never repay your parents and should never say a bad word for them, no matter what they do to you. You should never even show them that you're not happy with them. I grew up, by the way, I remember coming home from school when I was even as young as 10 years old, and my mom would say, "Joel, how was your day?" I slam the door, tell her to F off, and that was the way I was. I was terrible to her. So it wasn't even a question of forgiveness. It was just acceptance.
This is your way of life. So for you, that was normal.
Yeah.
What a brilliant character trait that is. Because a lot of people, they hold on to a grudge, which, for some people, it can spur them on to do great things. But for the majority of people, you hold on to that negativity and that toxic energy.
Right.
And it just manifests in horrible ways in your life.
That's
right?
true. But sorry, go on.
For up until the age of 18 or 17, 18, you said in your words you lived a fairly selfish life and you only thought about yourself. And then within the space of 6 months, you pretty much went from living that selfish life to then turning your life around, but having such solid core morals and values that even when your parents threw you out, as you said, there was no element of forgiveness because it doesn't matter what they did.
No, it didn't matter what they did.
That's amazing. I think for a lot of people it would be very different. I wonder if them kicking you out strengthened your faith.
I think it definitely did because there's a daily awareness of the fact that I'm living, because I went to live in a mosque. I didn't have anywhere else to live. I stayed for the first few nights in a mosque in Regent's Park. And then one of the people in the mosque told me that there was a small mosque opening in Edgware Road. They needed somebody to open the doors for the morning prayer at like 4 a.m, and then close them after the last prayer about 9 p.m. And for that, there's a room, there's food, there's books.
Amazing.
There's no salary, but you'd have somewhere to live. So that's what I did. I went from having this amazing life to having a key to a small, tiny little building my job was to open the door and close the door at the end of the day. Every day that you're doing that, you're aware of the fact that you're doing this because of your faith, because this is what I chose. So I think it definitely did strengthen me. But the real turning point for me, I think, was when I met my wife.
Right.
That was the best thing that could have happened to me, was meeting my wife, and she was the opposite to me, extremely sensible, chartered accountant, really, organized, and she was fortunate.
Similar sort of age to you at the time, and she was the same age as you at the time?
She was 5 years my senior.
Okay.
Just everything that I wasn't, she was. And
so there was a real yin-yang.
It went together perfectly. The imam, so the equivalent to a priest, the imam of the mosque, said to me, there's a young lady, she's like you, she also converted to Islam.
Yeah.
And her family weren't happy with it. She would like to, because in Islam, one of the first things I learned was they told me no smoking, no drinking, no girlfriends. And I always said, well, the smoking and the drinking I can probably do without, but no girlfriends? That's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So a year or so after becoming a Muslim, the only option to me was to get married. For her, as a new Muslim as well, there's no boyfriend, so she wanted a companion in her life, so she was looking to get married. The imam put us together, said, would you like to meet? I said, yeah. I met her 3 times. And that we've been married now for 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
Amazing. So met 3 times.
Yeah, and that was it. Yeah.
3rd time lucky.
Yeah.
30 years. Incredible.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? When you're around someone, you just know that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have any doubt. So at that point, I think then even more the sense of accountability, the sense of needing to do something. It was an interesting point. You said holding on to grudges can sometimes motivate people to do great things. Yeah. In my case, I didn't hold on to the grudge, but I did know that there was one thing that I wanted to do, which was to show my mum and dad that I can make it.
Yeah.
That I can do it.
This is why I thought it would strengthen your faith, because they were trying to push you away from it.
Yeah.
And you were trying to maybe in some way prove that this is worthwhile. And this is really you.
Yeah.
But when I first heard your story, I thought that you would have been plagued by resentment.
Okay.
By what had happened.
Right.
I obviously didn't know the full story.
Sure.
So from just hearing, I thought, how can someone, change their faith, be kicked out on the street from a young age, made homeless by their parents, instantly forgive them?
Right.
For me, I know I keep going back to this, but I was expecting the opposite. I was expecting, not speak to them for 20 years and all this sort of stuff, which it really shows the power of faith and believing in something and having that strong moral compass.
Yeah, I think that's true. Once you have that was what was always lacking, I think, growing up. Yeah. So there were no borders.
Yeah.
There was no discipline. There was no sense of right or wrong. There was just do whatever I want. As long as it makes me feel good, no matter how many people I hurt, as long as it makes me feel good, it's okay. But as you get older, I think, you realize that it's good to have some rules in place and boundaries.
I think, I grew up in a Catholic house, and my parents both, they're religious, and I didn't really go down that route, but I have a very strong moral compass, which I found through martial arts.
Right.
And, through Taekwondo, you've got the 5 tenets of Taekwondo. Through Kung Fu, you've got the Wu Dai. These different traditional art forms are often more about teaching young people in almost a disciple manner the kind of way to live a good life.
Sure.
And it's less about the kicking and punching and all that sort of stuff, which is just a byproduct, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But this is how you live a good life and be a good person.
Yeah.
And I think, the sort of tenets of Taekwondo, the perseverance, indomitable spirit, integrity, courtesy. These are the things that I think are so missing for so many young people.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of martial arts is that a young person can be enrolled and they can fall in love with the whole idea of a black belt and the kicking and the punching and the self-defense because it's cool. But then you start to really get into it, and they're like, you see them transform.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started, my first club for the Warrior Academy. It was a Thai boxing club.
Okay.
In a rundown inner city gym. And I think I had a lot of students like you in there who were kind of, they were sort of 14 to 17, drugs, alcohol, substance abuse, social unrest, kicked out on the street. A lot of them are homeless. They'd come in with black eyes from fighting on the weekend. This is the first Warrior Academy club. Well, we called it Warrior Thai Boxing then. And they just came to let off steam in this club because they had such challenging, difficult lives. They came to let off steam and to fight. And so when I took over this club from the previous instructor, I was only 19, 20, and these guys were 2 years younger than me, but I came from a traditional background, had spent some time in Thailand fighting professionally, so I understood Thai boxing very well. And I brought both these styles together to create something which gave them the testosterone outlet, but then had a real strong focus on morals. And so initially they'd come in, swearing, kicking their shoes off, lining up wherever they wanted to, having a cigarette out the window. Within a few months, I had these guys bowing as they entered, parking their shoes, calling each other sir. The level of respect totally changed. They stopped drinking, they stopped smoking, they stopped going out at the weekends. They really got their lives together. They started to respect their parents, even though they were going through difficulty. And within a year, we had 12 national champions or something from the group. And that was really the spark that kicked off all of this. It was the moment when I realized martial arts was about character development. And the whole, these guys, they had been fighting on the street for most of their life. They knew how to fight anyway. It wasn't about the fighting and the physical side. It was about, I had now planted the seeds of a black belt character that would go on to serve them for the rest of their lives. And so I wanted that for younger children. So that's when I started working with younger students in a primary school with 20 kids who are sort of 4 to 8. If I can work with them from that age, then I can plant the seeds. And it sounds to me like you found exactly that. You found something which finally gave you a moral compass.
That's true.
I think that I think human beings are craving discipline today more than ever. I'm seeing a lot of human beings move towards religion more so than I have done before. I see a lot of human beings try to bring discipline to their lives by doing challenges, a difficult daily habit routine or whatever it is. I think that we're surrounded by entitlement. We're surrounded by instant gratification, dopamine hits on the phone, and I think we're craving discipline. And I think there's lots of ways you can pursue that. Faith, doing arduous challenges, or finding a martial arts club, or whatever. But I can certainly see that. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Happiness and extreme elation isn't peace. Peace is neutral. Peace is not one way or the other. It's just peace. And so I can see a lot of parallels between the route you've gone down and the route those young men went down, and how that moral compass then shaped everything.
It's interesting.
So moving on from there, then, you got married, and then what are the next kind of phases after that?
Well, I think I got married, so I had to earn a living. So at that time, I was doing mini cab work, taxi work. I was working in the supermarket, stacking shelves. What else was I doing? I was selling incense oils on Kilburn High Road. There was a table, and we used to sell incense on there, make whatever I could make to be able to go home and put some food on the table, which again was very different from where I thought I would be. I thought that I would be
taking over the family business.
General manager of Afia Partners, and here I was stacking supermarket shelves and selling, incense and oils on Kilburn High Road. It was almost, it was so far from how I thought life would be, but it's what I had to do. But I wasn't particularly happy. I was happy with life. I was happy with, the fact that my first son was born when I was, I would have been 20. And then, when I was 22, second son was born. So I was happy with that. But I was very miserable living in London, because London had gone from being a city that I loved London, to a city that I didn't feel safe in anymore. So I had a lot of problems with fights in the streets. There was a lot of bad feeling towards Muslims. There were a lot of terrible things being said, and more than things being said, there were physical attacks on the streets. I went through a lot of things, and I wasn't prepared for that at all. And I realized that I no longer felt safe in my own city. And that was when I think I was about 24, 25 years old. And I remember looking out of, I think I was in Labrador Grove, and I remember looking out, the sky was grey. I thought to myself, there's got to be something better than this. You know, there's got to, there's got to be something better than this, where I can be walking down the street, where I don't have to worry about getting attacked. And I spoke to my wife, and I said, do you think we just go and see the world, travel? Let's go and see what else is out there. We talked about it. She liked the idea. We realized we had a friend, a good Canadian friend of mine, was living in Morocco. I said, let's go and check it out. So I went to Morocco, went to go and see Morocco, Marrakesh. Loved it. Felt so peaceful there. Had for the first time in many years, I could walk down the street without anybody looking at me strangely for having a beard, for being a Muslim, because at that time we didn't have CCTV cameras, so there were some. I went through a lot of very violent attacks, very violent fights on the street. And here I was in Marrakesh, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to look over my shoulder, and it was just an amazing feeling. So I decided, okay, let's go there. So we took the family and we started living in Marrakesh for a few months, and then my money ran out.
Right.
You know,
how many kids did you have at this point?
3.
3 kids, yeah.
Yeah, my daughter was born, and I had 3 kids, and I loved living there, but I couldn't afford to live there. And in Marrakesh, I don't know about now, but back then, you could live like a king for really just, not much money at all. You had beautiful villa, orange trees, lemon trees. It was just incredible, so beautiful. But I had to keep on going back to London, doing taxi work, make a few £100s, and I come back
to Marrakesh.
Yeah, it wasn't sustainable.
Was it Marrakesh? Or
it was Marrakesh, yeah. It just wasn't sustainable.
No, you were chasing two kind of lines. Yeah, worlds apart.
Yeah, exactly.
They may have known how to Ryanair, and
you're right, they were. One day I stumbled into an internet cafe. Back in those days, you had to go to use the internet cafe. I went in there, and somehow an advert popped up on the computer for teaching jobs in Saudi Arabia. There was a job that popped up saying conversation teacher needed.
Right.
I thought, conversation, that sounds easy. I remember I hated education, of course, so I was kicked out of every school.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went through the requirements for this job. Loads of requirements, loads of experience, and I just wrote to the guy, and I said to him, "Dear Dr. John, let me start by telling you I don't have any of the qualifications or experience that you're asking for, but I think I'd be really good for you and for your company, and let me tell you something about myself." And I just started writing. I don't know what nonsense I wrote, but I wrote a really long email telling why I thought I got this, I'm able to see things from the Western perspective, from the Middle Eastern perspective, perhaps because of my faith, and I don't know how or what I was saying to him. I sent him a really long email saying I'd love the job. And went home, told my wife. She said, "You're crazy." I said, "Yeah, but you never know." And I went back the next day, checked the internet, checked my email, and nothing. And I kept doing that for about 10 days and nothing. And after about 10 days, I realized, okay, obviously the application hasn't gone anywhere. And about two and a half months after that, I was going back to the UK. So I went to go and email my friend to pick me up from the airport. I went to it was my Hotmail account. Hotmail was down, and I needed to send an email to him. And the only email account that I had was this email account that I'd used to apply for that job. So that job that I applied for, I create the page where the job had been advertised was called tefl.com. And you could create, which meant teaching English as a foreign language. And you could create an email using their names. So I created Afia@tefl.com. I thought that would make me look like I was really keen on teaching. But I'd forgotten all about the email because months after I'd applied for the job, went to that email to send an email to my friend. And I saw in the subject heading EO. There was an email that said EO. So I was EO. Clicked to open. Employment offer.
Wow.
I didn't remember what it was. What's an employment offer? And I was reading it. And then it dawned on me. Been offered the job.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And that was in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. So
made the move.
And went to Saudi.
Whereabouts in Saudi?
In Jeddah.
Jeddah, okay.
Yeah, went to Jeddah, left the family in Morocco, went to Jeddah for the first few months by myself. They said when I arrived there, I said, they picked me up from the hotel, took me to the office, said, "Hi, I'm the new conversation teacher." They said, "Oh no, we filled all the you took so long to get here. We've actually filled all the places for conversation teachers. We're going to put you in the grammar classes."
Right, okay.
Oh my God, I don't know the difference.
Just what you wanted, yeah.
Violin and a verb. And
right, we had conversations at ground.
yeah, and I was convinced I was going to lose my job within the first few weeks. I remember calling my wife and telling her this is game over.
And there was no ChatGPT back then.
No, there was nothing. I had one book by a guy called Raymond Murphy. I'll never forget it. It was called English Grammar in Use by Raymond Murphy, a purple book. And I'd read it and read it and read it and understand nothing from it. And I was, oh my God, my worst nightmares have come true. I'm actually teaching. I hate teaching. I hate school. I'm not doing conversation. I'm actually here.
And you've become a teacher.
I've become a teacher.
Become your worst nightmare.
Yeah, I've become my worst nightmare. So somehow I managed to get through the first year, but it didn't go that well.
Right.
But they were really desperate, so I think they kept me.
Okay.
And I did try, to be fair. I'd really tried, but I was hopeless as an English teacher, really terrible. And then I came into work one day, and the guy at the desk, lovely guy called Abdulrahman, I'll never forget him. He said, don't go to class today. You have to go and sit in the manager's office. I said, what are you talking about? He said, they fired Zach the night before, the manager. They terminated him. And the CEO said, you need to take his place temporarily.
Became the manager.
Wow. And it's at that point, I think, that my journey in leadership began. And that's when things started to change. Yeah.
So then this passion and focus for leadership kind of became your new focus.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that. Well, that's a lot of what you do today, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's everything that I do today. Right. So for the first few months, see, when I first took the job, it was only temporary. They weren't going to make me the manager. I think they just had the right face. Maybe they thought that people might like me for now. So for whatever reason, they chose me to sit in this office. And I sat in the office, and for the first day, sat there doing absolutely nothing. I didn't know what I was meant to do. I had nothing to do. I didn't have internet.
No training.
I couldn't browse. I couldn't do anything. I had no training.
Yeah.
So I sat there, first day, second day, I thought, this is just rubbish. This isn't what I want to do. I actually enjoy being with my students, and I kind of miss being with them. Let me go back to teaching. And they wouldn't let me go back to teaching. They were trying to find a manager to take my place, but they had to have somebody in that office as the interim manager. So after about a week or so, I thought to myself, well, my dad's a businessman. My dad's always managed people. I'm going to get more money if I manage. There's a bit of position. Maybe I'll give it a go. So I went downstairs to speak to the CEO. I said, Dr. Hatton. I said, Dr. Hatton, if I did a really good job, is there a chance of you giving me this job permanently, or am I just keeping the seat warm? He said, Abdulrahman, if you do a great job, the job's yours. Now, obviously, looking back, I don't know know if he meant it or not, but he said to me, you do an amazing job, the job's yours. I said, Dr. Hatton, I'm going to do an amazing job. So I went back to my office and I said, right, I'm going to do everything I got. And for almost 3 months, I just worked day and night, blood, sweat, and tears to just be the best manager that I could be. And after 3 months of giving it everything that I could, everybody hated me. I was the worst manager you could imagine. Nobody listened to a word I said. I was hopeless. So despite trying my best, giving it my all, I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody told me how to lead people, how to manage people. So I was really just going based on what I saw in films, what I remember my dad doing, and trial and error. And it was all error. And it got to the point, I remember after 3 months, there was a guy called Hussam from Jordan, PhD holder. And I said to him, Hussam, he wasn't happy that I didn't have qualifications and I'd been made the interim manager. I said, Hussam, this is your new schedule. He said, I'm not doing it. I said, Hussam, you will do it because I'm in charge. And he just laughed at me and he said, go away. I said, go away. I went straight downstairs. Dr. Hatton, we've got to fire Hussam. He just told me to go away. He's no good. Oh, he said to me, Abdulrahman, go back to your office. Yeah. I said, okay, good. Hussam's going to get it. I went back to my office. I got a phone call from a guy called Khalil from the UK. He called me from the head office in Riyadh. He said, Abdulrahman, we need to talk. And the way that he said it, I knew at that point that the game was over. Basically, I'd probably blown it, and it was the end of my stint as a manager. I basically failed. And he said, I'm going to come down to Riyadh. I'm going to come down to Jeddah and we'll talk. So, okay. So the day he came down, I basically got my office cleared out and ready to move out of the temporary office I'd had. Yeah. It's game over. And he said to me, when he came down, he said, Abdulrahman, nobody taught you how to lead people. Nobody taught you how to manage people. That's my job. He was the franchise support manager of the Middle East. He said, that's my job. We should have done that from the beginning. Let me help you to understand what managing people's all about. And he did. He spent so much time with me, explaining to me the fundamentals of management, understanding what it meant to lead people. We'd watched early episodes of The Office with Ricky Gervais. Oh, yeah. He showed me like what not to do, and he made it so fun. And yeah, the light bulb moment of understanding, wow, there is a science to this.
Yeah.
There is a way of doing this. You don't have to just figure it out yourself. You can actually learn how to lead. And at that point, I think that's when I fell in love with leading people and helping other people to learn how to lead. Because I know how bad I was as a leader, how terrible I was as a leader. I had the passion, but I didn't.
And the effort was there.
Yeah. So
What a great example of a powerful mentor.
right. He was my
The influence of a great mentor
Absolutely.
in our lives, and he sounded like he taught you so much about leadership through actually showing you,
yeah, absolutely.
not just telling you what to do and how to do it, but literally through his actions.
Yeah.
So fast forward to today,
Yeah.
and I can see where the seeds of kind of leadership and the passion there has grown and come from.
Right.
Today, what is it you're doing?
So today I have the honor, the pleasure of being CEO of our family business, which is Afia Partners, where we
UK based or UAE based or
UAE based. Yeah, we're fully set up here in the UAE. It's a culmination of years and years and years of work. That everything just fell into place perfectly. And for years, when I was working in the leadership industry, I saw that there was a real gap in the market. There was a gap in the market because so many people and companies that I was working for were giving people off-the-shelf solutions. So you want to improve your management team, do this. This is what this company did, do this. And it was all off the shelf. And I realized through research, academic research, that that's not the most effective way. If you want to transform a management team, if you want to get amazing results, people need a program tailor-made to fit their needs. So we set up Afia Partners, which provides organizations with a competitive advantage by giving them tailor-made data-driven leadership development programs, essentially taking a team, identifying where the gaps might be in their leadership competencies as a team, seeing where the gaps are, and based on those gaps, designing a leadership journey for them.
all bespoke.
Yeah, absolutely.
Using data to really get to the bottom.
Using data, psychometric assessments to really see where are the gaps, because all too often people will be given a solution that strengthens what's already strong, and that's fine.
A generic program.
Yeah. So that's what we did, and we're fortunate enough to have the most amazing clients who love us and we love them, and we chose to limit the number of clients that we work with at any one time, so we can make sure that we give exceptional service, exceed expectations. When we set things up, it wasn't a growth model, not looking to be the next biggest organization. We just want to be an organization, and we are an organization where people say they are an absolute dream to work with, and that's what our clients say. So that's having gone from somebody who hated education in the most formal sense
to then doing it outside of the norm in a different way.
Helping people develop is just,
I think it's brilliant how you're approaching it, data driven as well. And we, I mean, a lot of leadership development is character development, right? And so a lot of what we do is very data driven. Right. We won an award recently for the customer insights. It was a Gold Customer Service Award. Okay. We beat other companies like Carrefour.
Wow.
Okay. Probably we're a small business, but it was, thank you. But the interesting there is the reason we won was because of how we use data.
Wow.
So when parents sign up to what we do, we have a breakthrough assessment where we analyze a child's confidence, conduct, concentration, the 3 C's.
Okay.
And then rather than just giving them the same thing, we then specifically work on one of those 3 C's to bring all 3 up to a higher level, right? To develop a black belt character.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're using data to develop leadership skills, you don't waste time.
Yeah.
You go right into what really matters and you make the biggest impact.
Yeah.
So I think that's fascinating.
And like what you just described, you have credibility as well, because you're doing what you're doing for the betterment of that individual or that team of people, based on not just what you think is best, but what the data actually shows you needs to be worked on. So in that way, I think you build credibility as well.
Often not what people think.
Yeah, no,
not what they definitely work
100%. 100%.
Abdulrahman, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
I think I could continue talking with you for another few hours. Yeah. I think we might need to have you back again.
I'll be happy
just to talk about leadership.
Sure.
The core message I got from today was how we as parents can really make sure that we accept our children's unique gifts and what it is that makes them individual, And the conversations I had with you today and before this this interview, how the way you approach parenting with your children and how they're all very unique. I think that's a really powerful message. I think it's very easy for parents to have an idea of what their child will become or what they're going to be into, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Both my children have to be martial arts instructors now. So for a lot of that, I think you can put your child in a box before they're even ready to kind of
for sure.
You find out what they really want to do. And I think that's a really amazing message. But I think if you do that the wrong way and you do put them in that box, they'll never really find happiness in life, right, or peace in life.
Yeah.
They'll always feel that kind of emotional repression around what they could have been or should have been.
Yeah. So, really valid points. I think also having done that is why I'm fortunate enough to be able to have a family business. So my son's director of operations, my other son's director of quality, my daughter's running social media, my wife's taking care of the finance side of it. Even my grandson, who's only 2 months old, we've given him the title of Chief Happiness Officer because he just makes us smile. So,
brilliant.
So having everybody with their own individual strengths is what makes the team, I think, so strong.
And keeping that family unit together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Despite all the things you've been through, you've managed to maintain the family unit, and that's driven by your morals, and that's super inspiring.
Yeah, well, thank you. I've enjoyed sharing it with you.
Yeah, thank you for your transparency and honesty, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I really hope you enjoyed today's Warrior Academy podcast episode. We're going to keep creating these episodes because I know that so many parents find them useful or get insights or get ideas about how to develop their child's character. But it all comes down to the 3 C's: confidence, conduct, and concentration. So if you want to get a deep insight into the levels of confidence your child has, the level of concentration they have, or the level of conduct they have, so that you can actually put a score next to it and then work towards increasing those scores like we do in the Warrior Academy, then I'd love to invite you to fill in the Breakthrough Area Assessment. It takes about 5 minutes of your time, and you will get a personalized PDF report on your child's 3 C's. To access the Breakthrough Area Assessment and find out your child's 3 C's score, all you need to do is go to www.breakthrougharea.com.